Chapter 1: The Hanging Girl. Dust devils chased tumbleweeds across the cracked earth as the sun dipped low over the jagged hills outside Dead Ridge, Arizona territory. The sky burned orange, casting long shadows across the plains. Elijah Kane, a rancher with more ghosts than cattle, rode along the trail that cut through Boneyard Gulch, a place most folk avoided after dusk. But Elijah wasn't like most folk. He wore grief like his old duster, faded and heavy. His wife had died 2 winters ago in childbirth, and the baby hadn't made it either. He'd buried them both beneath the willow tree behind the ranch house. Since then, Elijah lived alone with his horse and a Winchester rifle, more comfortable with silence than people. But tonight, silence was shattered by a chilling sight. Up ahead, swaying gently in the wind, was a young girl hanging from a cottonwood tree. Elijah's stomach turned. He kicked his horse into a gallop, drawing his knife as he approached. The girl wasn't fully grown, maybe 16, 17 at most, her skin copper brown, hair long and braided, her feet dangling inches above the ground. Around her neck a rope bit into her skin. Her eyes were closed, but then they fluttered. She was alive. He leapt from his horse and sliced the rope with one clean cut. She fell into his arms, light as a sack of feathers. Around her neck someone had tied a crude wooden sign, "White man don't forgive." Elijah crumpled the sign and flung it into the dust. Chapter 2: Between Two Worlds. Back at his ranch, Elijah laid the girl on his late wife's bed. He tended her bruised neck with water and balm, whispering gentle things as if she were a spooked colt. She didn't speak, only stared with wide eyes filled with fear and exhaustion. Days passed. Elijah offered her food, rest, silence. He didn't press her for answers, just let her be. On the 5th day, she finally spoke. Her voice was hoarse and barely audible. "My name's Nita." "Elijah Kane," he replied with a respectful nod. I wasn't stealing, I was looking for my brother." "Who did this to you, Nita?" he asked softly. She hesitated. "White men in town. Said I was a spy for the Apache. Said, there ain't no mercy for my kind." Dead Ridge had always been a volatile place. Gunfights, racial hatred, and lawmen who turned their eyes away when the guilty held power. Elijah felt a bitter twist in his chest. He remembered the townsfolk whispering about attacks on settler families. Any Apache within sight was blamed, whether guilty or not. "I ain't no spy," she whispered. "My mama was Apache, but my father was white. He taught me English, raised us Christian. He died a year ago. Now it's just me and my brother, or was?" Elijah saw her pain, raw and ragged. It mirrored his own. Chapter 3: Dangerous Bonds. Over the next few weeks, Nita healed. Elijah noticed how her hands were calloused. She'd worked hard somewhere. She knew horses, how to mend a fence, how to read the weather in the clouds. The ranch had been dying before she came, the land needing 2 pairs of hands. Elijah never asked her to stay, she just stayed. They worked in quiet rhythm, 2 broken souls tethered by hardship. Slowly, Nita smiled more. She sang soft Apache songs to the colts and baked corn cakes like her mother taught her. Elijah began to talk again about cattle, the weather, and eventually his wife and baby girl beneath the willow tree. One afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the buttes, Nita asked him, "Do you believe in redemption?" He paused. "Used to, before life beat it out of me." "I still do," she whispered. That night, he stood by the window and watched her braid her hair by lamplight. His heart ached, not in pain, but in something terrifyingly close to hope. Chapter 4: Smoke and Fire. Trouble rode in with the morning. 3 men on horseback appeared at the ranch gate. They were from town. One wore a sheriff's badge he didn't deserve. "Got a report you're harboring a red-skinned girl," the sheriff said, chewing tobacco. Elijah's face turned to stone. "I've got a hand working my ranch, that's all." The sheriff leaned over his saddle. "You forget the girl strung up in Boneyard Gulch? She's Apache. That makes her a threat. Law don't forgive, Kane." "Maybe it ain't the law that don't forgive," Elijah replied, his voice cold. They left, but not before spitting in the dirt and promising they'd be back. That night, Elijah loaded his rifle. Nita stood behind him. "I should go," she said. "You leave, they'll track you. Alone, you'll die. I can't let them burn your ranch because of me." He turned, and for the first time, touched her face gently. "This ain't just my fight anymore." Chapter 5. Blood and Redemption. At midnight, fire lit the horizon. Riders galloped toward the ranch, torches blazing. Elijah and Nita took cover behind the corral fence. He fired the first shot, striking one rider clean off his saddle. Chaos erupted. Bullets tore through the night. Nita grabbed her father's old pistol and held steady, her aim sure. They fought like warriors, he with years of regret burning in his chest, she with centuries of survival in her blood. When the dust settled, 2 of the men were dead and the others had fled. But Elijah had taken a bullet to the side. He fell hard, blood staining the dirt. Nita screamed, rushing to him. "Don't you dare die on me," she cried, pressing rags to his wound. "Hurts like hell," he muttered, "but I reckon I'll live." Chapter 6. A Place to Call Home. It took weeks for Elijah to heal. Nita nursed him, refusing to leave his side. The town turned quiet after the gunfight. Folks realized Elijah Kane wasn't a man to be crossed, and the girl they'd tried to hang was still standing, and stronger than any of them. The sheriff resigned. A new marshal came to town, one with a badge and a conscience. Elijah and Nita stood beneath the willow tree one morning as he held her hand. "I buried everything I loved here once," he said, his voice rough. "Didn't think I'd ever feel alive again." She leaned into him, eyes misty. "And now?" He looked at her. "Now I think maybe God gave me a second chance." A month later, the ranch held a small wedding. No church, no preacher, just a ring, a promise, and 2 hearts that had known too much pain and still chose love. Epilogue. Forgiveness rides again. The sign that once hung around her neck now sat nailed to the barn door, but with a twist. Elijah had carved it himself. It read, "White man can forgive, and so can Apache." The land bloomed that year, the cattle grew strong, and a ranch that had once been haunted by loss became a haven for orphans, runaways, and anyone the world had cast aside. Elijah and Nita Kane lived long, loved fiercely, and raised 5 children who never had to wonder if they were wanted. Because they were born from love that defied hatred, from pain that found healing, from a hanging tree that blossomed with redemption.